So we just got all the parts in for the C63s. The customer approved the radiator replacement that was broken and a new radio. They decided to get their own radio off reseller, eBay, I believe. So we'll see if that works. It should. It's the same style. Like, it's gonna fit physically. I just don't know if it's gonna be programmable or not. So that's kind of a trial and error type thing. A couple interior pieces that were missing, so we got a couple of those to put like the grab handles back on and things. And I found a couple of screws missing. These are, I don't know, $1 or $2 and some cents. So we're gonna get the radio replaced and the radiator replaced on this. Go ahead and take the radiator cap off so that whenever you drain the coolant, it can all drain a lot more smoothly. This basically acts as a vent to the system, so it's not like gurgling on its way out. And one thing I noticed, this bumper bracket is quite bent. This bolt here, this U-nut that it's going through, this must have been from an old bumper because the one that's supposed to go in is already there. So that bolt, this is just needs to go away. And this bracket needs to be, honestly needs to be replaced. I mean, maybe I can mangle it with a hammer to get it back in place, but that's what that bolt's supposed to thread into. And this one over here, it's supposed to look like this, except there's supposed to be a bolt through there, and there's not a bolt through there at all. But I'll get one of those. I'm sure it's $1 or $2, so no big deal. A lot of hardware you can just replace without, you know, just kind of like on the shop and not worry about those. Some of these bolts are really expensive though, but like little stuff like this, I'll replace as I see it and come along. This has to get unplugged. The ambient air temperature sensor. And then now that I don't have to remove those, it's just the top screws and then the bumper will be off. There's supposed to be one there. And then there's supposed to be one down there, same spot. No. That's one of the things I got here. Are missing in there. Also got this headlight bolt because where was it? I noticed this one, that one. You can see it's in there, but it's broke off. Like the head of it broke off, and it's just the shaft is in there. So I'm gonna see if I can get that out. Hopefully I will be able to. And then I can replace it with that new one. There's these bumper brackets I'm talking about. You can see here now, this is the hole where the bolt would go through that bolts the bumper to the car. And this is one of the undershield, screw, the little U-nuts. And this one on this side, oh, that's ripped. This one, obviously, see, it's bent back and over. And I don't know exactly where it's supposed to be. And if that's bent like this, this probably isn't in the right spot either, so. With it being a piece like this, it would be so easy to replace, and I'm sure this isn't more than $20. I'll tell him how much it is and see if he wants to get a new one of those, and hopefully I'll be able to have it by the time I reassemble this within a day or two. If not, I mean, I could make it work. It's just, it's not going to be perfect. Yeah, you can see it's pretty contoured, like it's a pretty complex shape. It'd be different if it was just supposed to be straight or like a 90-degree angle or something, but you have all this geometry going on. and it locates 2 other things that bolt to it. Like, it's just worth replacing, really. I don't see any other damages up here besides this. I'll quote that out too, since I'm in here. Anything while I'm in the middle of a job, as long as it's not coming from Germany and I can get it in a couple days and it's free labor, then I'll kind of pitch that to the customer as like, just give them the option if they want to replace it or not. So this is the oil cooler. On this car specifically, the oil itself flows through this oil cooler. It's not like you have coolant that flows to an oil cooler and cools it. It's the oil itself is directly cooled by the air. So you have literal oil flowing through this one, which is kind of rare in modern cars. A lot of times you'll have an oil cooler that coolant and oil will both flow into, and it'll cool it down from the coolant. But this one has this. I think there is one similar to that on this side of the block. On the C's. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, that's every 63. They might have it blocked off on some of the models, or the GT might be different because it's dry sump. But you have the same type of cooler there on the left side of the block. So this is the oil cooler bracket that's broken. So, oh gosh, well, to replace this, yeah, you have to disconnect this oil line, disconnect the oil line, you drain the oil out. So it's gonna be an oil change, plus the seal on this, like the O-ring on this line you'll replace, plus this. So this now turned into the cheapest part of this job, which is how it goes a lot of times. Like the piece you're in here to replace, a lot of times is the cheapest part out of the whole job. Not the cheapest, but a small portion of the whole thing. A lot of stuff you have to drain coolants and fluids and refrigerant and stuff to get to things, so that's not uncommon. It's just part of it. Here's this headlight screw. See that? It's not supposed to be in there. The heads broke off of the top. So I'm gonna see if I can get it out with a pair of pliers. There it is. That's the old bolt. So now the headlight will be able to be held in by all 3 bolts again. The coolant out, or whatever little is left in there. It really should not be filled any more than past where this hole is. So this whole thing, and then the rest of the system is below that level. Oh my. Look how clogged up this AC condenser is. That is absolutely covered. Okay, but first, before I do that, I'm gonna move this and see if there's anything I can do about getting all this cleaned out. This is literally more than half of the condenser is covered. And covered, not like a little clogged, completely covered, like a blanket of baked on dirt. There's really no good way to clean radiators. Maybe a low pressure washer from the back side. But you have to take this whole radiator pack out and apart and get the AC condenser alone and put it on the back side and pressure wash it off, maybe. I'll go over it with a vacuum and at least get all this stuff out for sure. Clean all that up. And some debris on the oil cooler as well. Just any of this loose standing stuff, you know, that I can get up while I'm in here, obviously. But let's see if we can do something about that. That did a lot better than I thought, actually. I'm pretty satisfied with that. That freed up a lot of airflow. Basically, I was trying to dab it in the same way that I'll like clean up glass whenever someone will have like a shattered out window and there's glass on like the seat or anything. You can't drag this across it. You're gonna push the glass into it. And same with this, especially these fins are so thin. You can't just drag it across it like you're vacuuming up like dirt from a carpet. So I was trying to dab it in like sort of that same fashion to not bend any of the fins at all. So that worked out pretty well. I mean, it's far from clean, but it's substantially better than it was before. Probably 20 degrees worth of cooler, if that, honestly. I'm curious to see how cool this is blowing in the summer. But anyways, I'm satisfied with that. And we also just heard back from the customer, and they approved replacement of all the broken bits and pieces I found along the way. Like, we're getting a new one of these for them, a new one of these, this bracket that was bent, the bolts here, and the missing bolt. So, but he approved all of them, so we're gonna get all that done. So while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and take off this shroud from this cooler, and I know there's going to be crud down in there too, so I'll go ahead and vacuum that out and not go for any more. This is going to be trash, but I just like to save everything I take off of a car until the new one is here and on, because you never know. There's been time after time I've thrown something away and then realized there's a part on it. Like, what if the seal doesn't come on the new one? Which it absolutely should, and I'm 99% sure it does. Like these little rubber grommets that act as guides inside that metal bracket, I don't think they're detachable. I don't think anything on this is detachable, but you never know. If I throw it away now, the new one comes in next week, and then now I have to buy new attachments for this thing all over the place because I didn't realize it's in two pieces, or the seal doesn't come with it, or something like that. So I just save everything until the car's completely done, reassembled, and then I throw away everything related to that job. So that's going in that pile. And this is ready to go back together once I get the part. So I will begin reassembling the radiator and get it as far back together as I can. I just realized I can't fill it with coolant because I have to put that plastic clamshell back together over this coolant pipe, so I still won't be able to fill it with coolant. So then I still can't do the oil cooler because I want to drain the oil while it's hot, so I can't start the engine. It's going to overheat by the time the oil gets hot because there's no coolant in it. Just like to lube that O-ring a little bit on the inside of the pipe so it slips on easily and doesn't tear or fold over the O-ring or anything. And this is all dry plastic, so it should go on and click on nicely. Like that. Did you hear that? I hope you did, because it sounded nice. So with that being torqued down, that's about all I can torque down here. So with everything else, I have all these bolts in place for a lot of this stuff, but they're just loose. Like and these two are one-time use only. They're torque to yield. So they're in just to line up all this stuff, but I'm getting new ones of these that aren't in yet. And like all this stuff is just in, like not tight. It's just threaded in. So because there's a certain order I like to torque this stuff down in. Like I like this thing to be, I torque down these two back bolts that are back here first to like pull this as far back as possible, and then I do these to kind of like clamp all this assembly together, this and this and this, and then I do this once there's no stress on this bolt, like everything else is in place, because these two are the structural ones that are actually important. I don't know, just in my mind it makes sense. And then I do all these little bolts, because I don't want to hold it in place with this, like torque this one down first, and then it's bound right here, and then I'm trying to bolt these down, and it's pulling on this, you know what I mean? Maybe not, I don't know. It's just, this isn't an actual rule. This isn't in the service manual. This is just, in my head, it's the most like stress-free way to like torque something down, to where you clamp it all down in a certain order, and you don't have any like of the other bolts binding or pulling on them whenever you're tightening down another bolt. Okay, the horn harness is rerouted. Horn's plugged in. None of this stuff is blocking, so I can still get to it whenever I replace those bolts. Next that's going on, the upper radiator support. There's a couple things with these. One being this little rubber bushing that goes on the radiator here, like the upper radiator. The main radiator, because this is a pack of 3 on this car. 3 plus the oil cooler. But these little guys. Soft rubber guides that go in the top of the radiator itself, and this is what anchors this whole unit together, because you can see it's still quite loose, and this one's staying in there. But it's what these will slide into to locate the radiator and hold like the top of this pack in place. And another thing with these also, these are like self-leveling threaded pucks. I make sure they're all in place, all 4 of these. This one, for example, is up out of place, and they're reverse thread. So here, let me screw it all the way down. Okay, notice how I'm screwing it like unscrew motion, but it's screwing down all the way to, oh, one more turn. All the way to that slit is lined up. So that whenever you put this bolt in, these bolts, also one-time use, so I got 4 new of these coming, and they're prone to rust, like this one, for example. Maybe this one's even worse. I'll use this for an example. Rusty. And they all come with not like thread locker, but it might act as thread locker, but you can see there's a little bit of that white stuff in the threads. But it comes with the whole, nearly, it's probably, I don't know, 10 of these threads are coated with that stuff. It's sort of like Teflon tape, except not. Maybe that's a bad example, but it looks like it has the same consistency. But whenever you put a new bolt down in there, it grabs these, and you don't press it hard into place. Like you just put it down to where it grabbed it. And it's going to, see? So this bolt is not threading in yet. I can feel it rising on my fingers. But it screws this up until it touches this plate and sandwiches it together to take out any gap in it, because this is part of like this crash structure. But so you basically twist that up until it makes contact, and once it does make contact, then you know you're gonna have tension on this, and then the bolt will overcome like that small tension and go down to the point where the threads start down inside there and start actually threading itself in. So you can imagine if you have this sticking halfway up, you're not gonna be able to insert this in there. So getting this in, you can see it kind of slips in with a very large amount of play. You see the air gap? So then once you put these bolts in gently and rise them up, it completely takes out any air gap, you know, in here. And then you torque the bolts down, and that's what holds it in place. So this is the purge valve bracket, one of them. With any car being turboed, there's different ways to do it, but Mercedes always has 2 separate purge valves. One that can purge at like wide open throttle or under boost, and one that can purge normally when the engine's in vacuum. So this can go in. Okay, and then all these other bolts, I'll just get snug to where this can still freely move around, because I'm sure all this is going to move once I torque down all these other bolts. Now for this side. Okay, both hood latches are in, torqued down, permanently to go. It's gonna be these braces that also won't be able to be torqued down because they hold these two things together. I'll just do a short little follow-up segment of this of replacing all these little broke pieces and stuff, so you can see that getting done. But it all should go back together pretty smoothly and quickly. All the real work is done now. And just filling the cooling system, which I can't do yet because one of the hoses on this is still disconnected. But once I get that hose put back on, once I get this trim piece, I'll be able to refill the cooling system, button all the stuff up, replace these little one-time use bolts, and then it'll be good to go. Oh, and then the radio. And then I can try to program this used head unit to the car, the radio. I'm curious to see whether or not that's going to be reprogrammable or not. It's the part number doesn't match exactly, but it's from a C class. But a C63 is kind of a different breed, but a lot of the electronics are the same. So I'm curious to see if it's going to work at all, like whenever you just hook it up. And then if not, if I can even program it or not, because it's already assigned to a car. Like I don't know that it's VIN coded, but it has been, initialized to another vehicle. So I'm not sure if that's possible or not. I made the owner aware of that too. I was like, man, you can try to do this if you want to. Because the one from Mercedes, $5,600. So that's kind of not an option. I mean, so yeah, definitely a used one is worth a try. So we'll see how that goes. But apart from that, the radiator's fixed, so it's not going to overheat anymore. So then if that radio is able to fix the electrical issue, then that'll be done too. And yep, all the issues will be done with this one, wrapped up. Okay, so for the meantime, I'm just going to put this back together enough to where I can pull it out, because I only have one bay, because this is my first shop. So this is the heater circulation pump. The cooling pump, this one. This is the electric pump that circulates the coolant for the secondary cooling system through the turbos and through the transmission. Just gonna unplug that so it doesn't kick on and try to flow air, because there's no coolant in it. But whatever coolant there is left in it, I don't want it to push this plug out and leave me a nice pink pretty line of coolant all the way out the door. So now that'll be inactive, yeah, there's nothing important disconnected, then yeah, I can put the wheels back on it and at least be able to pull it outside and work on a couple other cars until all this other stuff gets here. Okay, so I was just rolling this tire back over to the driver's side to put it back on. And this is the one that had that screw in it that I ended up taking out and just putting some bead sealer on it to screw it back in so that it's sealed for now, just to get it by. This is that other plug that I can tell has been in it. And I was talking about, it looks like it had been driven on low in the past. Well, I know it has because you have wear marks here on the sidewall, and you can see the top of the Michelin logo is ground off. So it has been driven on flat. So usually something like this, whenever I take it apart, I can see the inside of the sidewall shredded because it folds in over itself, and just like the rubber, it's like a pencil eraser. It leaves like little shreds. And listen, when I was rolling it over there, listen to this. That's all the shredded rubber inside the tire. So yeah, it's safe to say, I'm gonna go ahead and say this is not safe to drive on, just so it takes my liability out of it. Because you don't know how thin the sidewall is, and that's a lot of rubber. You can hear it in there. It sounds like sand almost. But you can see, if you can see the rubber worn like this, then you know, you don't know what the inside of that sidewall looks like. You don't know how thick this is right now because so much of that's been shredded away. Because whenever it's flat, it folds down over itself and like rubs itself thinner and thinner and thinner. And there's no telling how thin this is. If you get a lot of centrifugal force going through this thing at higher speeds, you know, if you're going 150 or 200 miles per hour, which some of these cars can do, the centrifugal force on the outside of this tire will like rip itself apart. You can see on the outside too, there's a good wear line on it. And that is when they'll come apart too. These run pretty high pressures. Some of them will be above 40. And then with that force at higher speeds, the tire can just rip itself apart. I would definitely look into replacing at least this one. I always try to do tires in pairs, but I would honestly do this one. This isn't like a money kind of upsell thing. This is a, I guess, safety recommendation. All right, well, C63 just left. The guy came and picked it up tonight as soon as I got finished with it, and as soon as I figured out that the radio isn't gonna work because the radio didn't work. It was the right style, but the shape of it was a little different. There was an extra bottom section of it that wasn't all on the old one, and it would have fit inside the hole physically, but also the connectors on the back of it didn't match up. It was missing some plugs that the old one had, and the new one had different ones that the old one didn't have. So we found another one that should work, and it's the exact part number of the one in the parts catalog for the C63, so that one should fit no problem, and we'll be able to see if I can program that or not. Just trying to avoid buying a new one, because new from the dealership is about $6,000 or a little under, 5,700 after tax and install. It'll be about $7,000. So anything past that would be worth exploring. So we're gonna try another used one of the exact same part number, see how that goes. But it's an easy swap. Like that's not even a thing. It's only 2 screws and one trim panel you have to unclip by hand. So everything else on the car turned out great. Not leaking anymore, not overheating anymore, and I haven't got the electrical issue to act up on me anymore, but he said it's very intermittent, so I'm sure it's still there because we never changed the part. But other than that, every single thing is done, and the car's back on the road now at least, so that's another one done.